It's time to join Dan and Angie in getting to know the small business owners and artists in your town. Small biz is where it is. Let's support our community by shopping small, keeping it local, and keeping things all fine and dangy.
That's right. Hey guys, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for tuning in this week.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, it's not just us this week. We're so happy to have another guest in the studio. Keep them rolling in. Keep them rolling in. Right?
Well, word is spreading, and I don't want to sound arrogant about that, but I am super thankful because we're having more and more businesses reach out to us. So I want to give a shout out. I don't know if we ever did, to the Asheville foodie page of all Facebook pages, because when we posted on there about the podcast, we got flooded. That's where it started.
I had to start the spreadsheet. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, so thank you guys so much. If you're part of that group and you're watching or listening, we really appreciate it. You've helped us out so much.
Shout out and to other small businesses like Rosa from Ruby's Home Cleaning, who suggested that our next guest join us on the show.
Indeed.
So we love when the small businesses are like, hey, you got to go on the show, or you guys got to check this person out. That is what we love.
Indeed.
So that's what helps us keep on these microphones.
That's right.
I just made the weirdest face.
I love that Angie does that. I love it. And one of the recent interviews,
like really kind of a cartoin character.
We're talking to the jiu-jitsu guy in one of the last ones, and Cole and Angie goes, "Hiya!" right in the middle of the conversation.
It was karate, whatever.
I love it.
Anyway, we have Heather Moreland here from LakeSite Accounting joining us. And, sometimes when you say accounting, people get a little cringy, don't they? You know? But we're going to fun it up. We're going to talk about a more creative accounting, as we kind of chatted a little bit before we got on the microphones here. So we're excited to just kind of hear your story, what your business is, and we're going to have a lot of questions about accounting while you're here, so hopefully we don't trip you up too much with the get a little calculator out, No, we're not going to do that.
Right.
But welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, welcome.
Thank you. It's really fun. Yeah, Rosa is great. Met her through a networking event, and
which is something she told me we have to go to. So I have to find out when the next one is.
The Black Mountain Business Club. It means at 9:00 at the Monte Vista.
Oh, it's regular time.
Yep. It's every Wednesday at 9 a.m. And
perfect.
It's always free to attend, and it's been a great little group.
So that is awesome. I will definitely be able to attend that one.
I'm writing it down right now. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Maybe Dan, or maybe not. Dan will be able to attend. He works a at-home job all week.
I do have a day job. But when is it normally? Is it in the evenings, did you say? Or?
It's at 9 a.m. in the morning, 9 to 10 on Wednesday mornings.
Yeah, I'm excited to check that out.
All right. Well, you may have to get back to me and tell me how it goes.
I definitely will. So I'll see you there, I'm sure.
Perfect. Yeah.
Awesome.
Glad to have you.
So tell us a little bit about what you do at LakeSite Accounting. Just a little tidbit, and then we'll kind of get into some of the questions we have get a little deeper into it.
Yeah. So most people, when they think of accounting, they think of tax filing. We just finished taxes a couple weeks ago, and we've all slept since then, which has been great. But we believe that bookkeeping is the forgotten piece before you get to your tax filing. So without good bookkeeping records, you can't make good decisions, and taxes are a byproduct of having good books already.
Yeah.
And that's the piece that most business owners forget. So we believe that you shouldn't have to wait until April of next year to know if you're making money right now, because then by that time it could be too late. You could be making better decisions.
Yeah.
So.
And, it can be this year was very overwhelming for us because we started an LLC with our Airbnb that we have in Florida.
Already had another LLC.
And he's an author, so he has an LLC. So I'm like, oh my gosh, our personal stuff plus two businesses and
my day job work,
and with being a short-term rental owner for the first year, there's so many write-offs, right? Because you're getting that house prepared. And I was pretty tried to be prepared, but it gets lost in the shuffle, right? So that's kind of where you fill that gap.
Exactly. So we take any bank or credit card accounts that they say, yes, we have business transactions here. We connect all of them to QuickBooks or Xero, something like that. And then every week we ask for receipts. We say, here's what you spent. Tell us what it's for. And then by the end of the year, every month we reconcile your bank accounts. And then by the end of the year, the taxes are a breeze because everything's already been accounted for.
Oh, wow.
So I was going to say, if you have good, I started to say, if you had good bookkeeping, it's probably not that terrible time of year when taxes come, because I've been on both sides of the fence with keeping almost meticulous books because I'm sort of OCD these days. But when I was younger, I was a train wreck with that stuff. So tax time came and it was like, put it off to the last minute, panic mode. I don't even know if I'm going to owe money or if I'm going to get money, that kind of stuff. So yeah, I definitely see what you're saying where it's almost easier to me, it seems, to keep track of that than it is to have to go back in arrears and try to figure out.
Oh, that part's hard.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we do a lot of cleanups. Cleanups being that sometimes we find people that have not filed since 2020. And so since COVID, they've just kind of put it all off. So
they're like, the world shut down, so did my taxes. I'm
exactly.
not doing it anymore.
Yes. And so we work with them on the personal level to look at their budget and say, okay, what's your real cost of living? What does it take for what does your business need to do in order to pay your bills? But then also, let's go back and recreate all of your records.
Wow.
So I'm not going to name people, but shout out to the people that might listen to this that know that they're the ones that are making huge steps toward having a handle on it.
Yeah.
Because they make huge strides. We look
Sure.
at their budgets and I see the light bulbs go off, and it's just really fun to go, oh, I can make a real change that I'm going to not have to stress about this in the future.
Yeah, because once the thing is, once you're that far behind, you're so scared to even attempt to look at it.
Right.
You know that you just it gets pushed back.
Mm-hmm. And so we make a big deal about we're not going to bring shame to the picture. We're going to be very friendly and encouraging. I like to say I'm a cheerleader. I'm not a critic. So if you feel like you've been criticized by bookkeeping before, we just don't need to do that. It's not helpful.
I love that because this is a thing I think that we've all had where it's like that, pardon the pun, but that sort of come to Jesus meeting where it's like, I don't want to face the music now. What if I have managed my money terribly? What if they see that I bought some stuff that I really shouldn't have bought, like that fancy new MacBook or something? So I love that you have that take because I think in some of the other financial advisor types that we've met with, there's people, that's why they don't want to do it because it's like showing mom and dad your bad report card. And you know what I mean?
Right.
So I love that you have that take like, hey, no big deal.
It's a very vulnerable space to be in.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And to kind of realize, especially if you're not in a great situation, to realize that was your failure almost.
Right.
You don't want somebody just digging it in even more.
The age-old question, which reminds me of that Rules of Engagement episode, but that age-old question where it's like, well, what did you think was going to happen? I hated that when I was a kid.
Just go away.
I was just worried about today. So I love that you have that take because I think it makes it much more approachable.
There's so many reasons why somebody might be, let's say, in their 50s and not have a handle on their finances.
Yeah.
Maybe they are divorced or widowed and their spouse always handled it for them. Or they went through a health emergency and that wrecked their finances and nobody really taught them what to do with it. There's so many legitimate reasons. And sometimes it's just that they just don't know and they don't make good decisions.
Yeah.
But it doesn't really matter. What matters is today we can change a new trajectory.
Yeah.
And I think that's really freeing, and I like being the coach that kind of helps get them along that way too.
Yeah, because you probably start with this sort of trepidation, at least as far as they're concerned, and you end with being the feel good, happy, you save the day kind of vibe. So it's probably very fulfilling that way because the thing always ends on a positive note.
Right. I had a client tell somebody else, we were at a networking event, and she said, yeah, Heather and I sat down for 2 hours and I didn't have a panic attack. And I was like, that's what we want to hear.
That's what you're going for, right?
Mission accomplished.
Yeah.
So I want to kind of talk about, so you talked about this cleanup that you do with, individuals or businesses. Really, kind of we can get into the small business because that's our little niche. So, small businesses, they could sign up, do their own QuickBooks. Tell me, with your expertise, how you kind of elevate that experience for them. How can you help a small business kind of make it go a little smoother throughout the year, or advice you may have along the way?
Yeah, so I appreciate QuickBooks a lot. The thing I dislike about QuickBooks, and I say this with all respect for small business owners, it allows them to do too much. And they don't necessarily understand what does it mean for something to be on the balance sheet? What does it mean to have an income or an expense account? What does it mean to say this is an owner's equity activity and not really a business expense? And so they need somebody to come in and explain what
She's
those
already
terms
saying
mean.
words to me that I'm like, I need to know what that is.
So I come in and teach them. So if a business owner comes in and says, I want to do my own books, I don't necessarily want to pay for it yet, or I don't want to let go of control of that part of my business yet, then I will come in and just teach them, this is what it should look like when it's done correctly. I had a business owner today, and they said, yes, I reconcile my bank accounts every month, but it was off by $100,000. And so I had to explain to them, what does it look like to have a truly reconciled account? And here's why this doesn't line up. And then these transfers were not quite right. And at the end of an hour and a half, we had put the whole first quarter in order, and he felt so good about it.
Nice.
And so he was a small enough business that we could do that. Some of them take a few weeks to put together.
But you do get there.
But we get there.
Yeah.
And by the time it's done, we can say, so here it is. And if a business is large enough to have multiple different segments, so you have an Airbnb, you have your own business, you've got these different channels, we can organize your QuickBooks so that you can see the income and the expenses for that category. So at the end of the year, okay, I spent 50% of my time on this endeavor, but most of my profit came from this side of my business. So maybe I should pivot and make decisions based on that new information instead of it all being combined into one report.
Yeah, so that's that's where your expertise comes in, because QuickBooks is just going to plug the numbers in for you, basically, and you have it on the books so that you can hand it over to your CPA at the end of the year if you work with a tax attorney, whatever.
And hopefully they make sure it's reconciled, because sometimes they don't. When I first started,
reconciling, because I don't even know what
reconciling is.
Is that like budgeting your checkbook?
No, reconciling. Can I try this one?
Please.
So reconciling just means.
Glad one of us knows.
Well, there's other terms that kind of mean the same thing. Reconciling just means balancing it out. So you need I need to figure out what this payment was for, like finding the receipt. And am I right? Like being able to.
That's the first step.
Yeah.
So the big picture concept is your bank or credit card statement and QuickBooks need to match. So everything that the bank says that happened, QuickBooks needs to say happened. So if a bank charged you $10 for a monthly fee, QuickBooks needs to also say that.
And if it doesn't, it's not reconciled yet.
Correct. Yeah. So at the end of it, the two balances may not be the same. For example, let's say on the last day of December, you wrote a check for somebody, but it hasn't cleared your bank yet.
I hate them stupid checks.
Checks.
Yes. So, but it can be PayPal, can even, they can have a 3-day delay. So your QuickBooks and your bank at the December 31st are going to be different, but you can explain why, because QuickBooks is the real truth. It includes the check that the bank doesn't see yet.
So you see that $850 check, and that's exactly what your bank is short.
Exactly.
Or over or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you can explain why there are any differences, but other than those known differences, they should match.
Yeah. And when you say explain, it's not to someone, it's just your own brain going, okay, this is why. To me, that's what reconciling is. It's
okay.
It's going to be the same, even if those technical details, like you're saying, I do this on a much less probably sophisticated and proper way. I'm using Excel, a spreadsheet that
I love Excel.
It's a spreadsheet that I created 20 years ago that I just keep tweaking.
It works for you though.
But it's got calculations all built in, but it does that. Like sometimes if the balance in my bank doesn't quite match, it's because I have pre-deducted auto payments that are coming. So I'm like the nerd that she picks on me because I am excited at credit card payment time because I'm like, it's like a game to me where I want to get this number down to that by this date.
3 digits.
So, but I haven't always been that way. I had like terrible credit when I was younger. And I think once you get good credit or excellent credit, you like fiercely protect it, like a baby child or something. So, so this is where my terms are, I understand your terms, but I want to rewind just a tiny bit because you've been doing this for almost a decade, right?
I have been. So I went to college. I went to Covenant College in Lookout Mountain, Georgia, which is outside of Chattanooga. And I didn't mean to finish. I kind of just went and thought, I'll just go see what the college experience is like. I took an accounting class my first semester. I liked it. I did well in the class. Most of the class didn't. And I thought, my professor said, just take another one. So I took another one. And then he said, just take another one after that. I ended up with 10 accounting and finance classes with the same professor because we had one accounting and finance professor who has since retired. And I had an accounting degree. And he said, well, you liked that one. Why don't you go get your MBA? So I said, why? Well, why not? So I was working at a manufacturing company in Chattanooga. Great company. Loved it. I thought I'd be there forever. They thought I'd be there forever. Did my MBA at night while I was working. And then I stayed for another 4 years. And by the end of those extra 4 years, I was dealing with some health challenges and I was just exhausted. And I could tell that cognitively I was declining and I was not performing at the level that I knew that I could and should be performing at. So as I started working with my doctor, she said, I think you have Lyme disease.
Oh, no.
Oh, wow.
And we decided to treat it holistically as basically I'm going to give you more Lyme so that your body learns how to deal with it and root it out, which was just an exhausting process.
Yeah,
And
because it just puts your body on high alert.
Right, exactly. And so I'd be running checks on Thursdays as I'm taking my medicine, and I slept all day Fridays, so just to kind of recover from the low-grade fever and all that. But by the end of that, so I ended up going to my manager and saying, you thought that I was going to be here forever, and so did I, and I'm as surprised as you, but I have to leave. I can't keep up this pace. And my doctor says it's stress, and my marriage isn't stressful. This is the most stressful part of my life, even though I love it, and I can't keep going that way. So I worked a 4-month long notice while I was going through treatment and figuring out what I was going to do. And what I discovered is that the pieces of my job that I liked the most was going to the other parts of the company, like quality control and the manufacturers on the production floor, and explaining to them what the numbers meant, because
teaching. Basically.
So I was teaching people. And so I would take I was consolidating these high level numbers, but going to them and saying, when you have a bunch of waste, this is what it does to the bottom line, because the materials you're using are cost X amount, and here's our profit margin.
And they're not thinking of it
and they don't think about it at all.
And that affects your bonus, and that affects your raise.
Exactly. And so it was a company that I believed wanted to do right by its people and pay them well, but if we were going to lose money because we had bad quality, then they just weren't able to do that.
That's right. That's a great, when you can break it down like that, though, for a company, especially smaller business, even larger businesses, they have people that they hire for that. Excuse me. There's something in my throat. It's a frog, I guess. I don't know. So why do they call it a frog in the throat? Anyway, don't go on that tangent. Don't go on that tangent.
It's probably the dust from that wall I just put up over there.
But to be able to break it down to the employees, I've done that before, where I'm like, well, this is why you save this stuff, because you save these rubber bands. Something so stupid, right? Stop throwing the rubber band on the floor. Pick the rubber band up. Reuse it as long as you can, because rubber bands cost money.
Every
little penny counts.
That
right?
may be generational, because I feel that way too. And I think sometimes, especially in like a big corporate world that I live in my day job, if you become a shareholder at the company, then you automatically, a lot of people's interest goes up. Some of us act like we're shareholders way before we are, because we're like treating it like our own money. So I love that you could take your expertise and apply it that way too, because I hate to say this, but people are more likely to respond if they think it's going to affect them directly,
Yes.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
To be able to bring it down to their level was great.
Well, especially because I think most companies are probably like this, but you have a quarterly meeting, and then we say, here's our numbers. Did we hit our target or not? And that just goes way over their heads.
Yeah.
Not because they're not smart people, but because there's so much context that goes into creating
it's not the
that number.
day to day. They need that broken down to the day. Really.
Right. So I discovered I loved coaching people. I loved making it very operational. And so I thought, well, okay, who else could benefit from that knowledge? And then I kept finding these small businesses. They were $5 million. They had 80 employees, and they had...
That's a small business?
Well...
Wow.
They were...
Yeah.
They were small business in that they had no accountant. They had somebody that was very responsible about paying all the bills.
Okay.
And she did that. And but accounting was on her background.
If you have somebody that can pay the bills and they have integrity, they're not stealing your money, that's a good spot,
and she was
right?
great for them, but they had never reconciled anything. And so we went in, and that was one of my first big clients of
exciting.
Like recreating years of things. And
that probably was really exciting, though.
It was
wasn't
fun.
It?
I mean, I just learned a ton, and I learned about... I came from a 900 employee company where we were meticulous about every meal receipt.
Well, that could still be a small biz, though, right?
It's small for manufacturing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And but we we were meticulous about every meal receipt. I mean, we would call salespeople and go, "Where are your receipts? You didn't turn them in on time." And so for a company to not care about that at all was just
you go from
a
one
real
extreme to
wake-up.
the next, and you're like, "No, we got to meet middle ground here."
Yeah, so I'm trying to like re-find out like what I say that I'm good at my job because I'm afraid of the IRS, and so I'm trying to protect them from the IRS and having all their receipts, and they're like, "Yeah, we don't care that much." And
Okay.
like there's a balance to be found there.
Sure.
So
But you should care a little
should
bit.
share.
I mean, just a little.
yeah, right. And like that $50,000 transaction that came through your bank, the IRS already knows about it because the bank reports it, and it's just things like that that the
Yeah.
average person doesn't think about.
See, so that's great things, because that would be like my questions with running a small business, or what are those kind of things that are red flags or that you can't do legally? You know what I mean? Like, because there are so many rules when you run a small business about paying yourself, and what does that look like? You know, so just learning all those things.
Yeah, and can I use my my vehicle? Can I write off my miles? You know, I've known friends with small businesses that write off miles, I won't say, for everything, every trip they go to that's not related, and it's not a company car, but you have to know the rules. Like it's so I'm with you. You start feeling like, okay, this isn't fair, I'm going to get audited, or this isn't fair to me, I can't write off that thing I use every day. So you know the rules of all that stuff.
It's a tricky thing because on one hand, I don't want people to be taxed more than they ought to be. So one of the principles we talked about in college was there are loopholes that are intended to be taken. Tax code incentivizes certain behavior. So take every tax incentive you can get because there's a reason why it was put in there.
Sure.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I don't want people to be so loose with it that the IRS decides, we're just going to come poke around and see what's going on. I had somebody tell me today, like the EPA and the IRS are similar. If they show up, they're going to find something. It's just how much are they going to find?
Right.
Yeah.
So I don't want to give them any tip off that they should come look at somebody's books.
Yeah. Especially with small businesses, you know, helping them to learn what those loopholes are.
Yeah. It's almost like their job to make sure that it's like, it always reminded me of, there's usually a position, I've been in corporate forever, you could probably tell by this, but there's usually a position in every big company or medium-sized company that reviews a business document, and it can be perfect, but because that position exists, there's going to be some changes on that document, no matter what. Otherwise, there's no justification for that job. And that's how I feel like the IRS is. Like, they're not going to show up for 3 days and go, perfect, and leave.
Good job.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're in trouble when they show up.
Right. And so there are some industries that, so I am not a tax attorney. I'm not even a CPA, and I chose not. I could have sat for the CPA, but I decided I didn't want to be a tax professional. I wanted to be an accounting professional, which everybody thinks they're the same, but that's okay.
They're not. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I suspect, this is my hunch, that industries that are highly regulated, like the CBD and hemp industry and things that are new, and I really care about them having good books, because I would not be surprised if they come and start checking out. There's a lot of money running through CBD companies right now.
Yeah.
And
Hear that, guys? Seriously, because we've had people on that run those type of businesses.
Right.
So,
and I don't want them to get in trouble. Like again, don't want them to pay more tax than they should, but also like there are rules for a reason, and I want you to be compliant. So,
and there's a bit of let's be honest, there's a little bit of a beef between those companies and the government to some degree.
Yes.
So that
I'm trying to be very careful with my words here, but
Oh, I'll say it.
I don't think there's any big, government people listening to our show. And if you are, you just keep listening. You just shush. Okay? You just shush it up.
Look, I'm not saying anything. I'm just saying I think we all know how politics work. We don't really talk about politics, as we said before, but if there's a
the way
beef,
the world works.
they're going to be interested in finding out, hey, let's go do an
audit. If there's
audit.
money to be made, let's put it straight.
Right.
Like, let's just put it straight.
Right.
Let's just put it
And
straight.
I don't necessarily love how the money all gets spent at the government level, but
That's right.
It's just-
You'll
that's
love
not
it
my
one
job to
minute, hate it
decide.
the next minute. Like that's a ever revolving door. Well, so you're not a CPA, but do you try to keep like current, like educating yourself as far as like on the tax codes and stuff like that, so you can kind of keep yourself educated for your clients?
Yeah, I do try and pay attention to things that change, of like, okay, these are categories that we need to pay attention to. Sometimes there's special R&D credits that come out for certain things. So I do try and stay abreast of
What's
those.
that? You're using acronyms.
Oh, sorry.
I don't know.
Research and development.
I'm so I'm living. It's a
probably
corporate
knew it.
world. I did. Yeah.
I know, if I get too corporate, you can just thank you. You tell me to stop. So it's things like that. I another thing my professor taught us was we had the only class with him that was open book was our tax class, and the highest grade in the class with an open book exam was an 80. I mean, it was just a brutal thing. But he said, I don't care if you learn and memorize the tax code, but I want you to be able to kind of sniff out when something might have an implication.
Because that's real life.
Yeah.
You're not going to
Exactly.
memorize it in real life either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So I try and be, I might put something in a certain account in their QuickBooks, and we say, this is your Ask Your CPA account, because I'm not totally confident if we need to do something special with it for tax reasons.
Yeah.
But if we set it aside, then we know these are the transactions that we need to talk about.
Right.
And then I learn along the way. And sometimes they say, oh, no, it was great. Just do what you thought you should do. And sometimes I learn something, and I'm glad to keep learning.
Yeah.
And that's what you mean by the difference between accounting and being like a tax attorney or whatever.
Exactly.
Because your
Our
job,
tax guy is actually a tax attorney,
Yeah.
so that's like a plus for
Yeah.
for us this year.
but that's where your job really is not just at tax time. Your job is all year with your clients, and that's the difference to
Correct.
me. Like when you're doing the accounting or helping with the accounting, that's needed every day. Not if you wait till tax time. That's what you're talking about, where it's like showing
that's
mom
like
and dad the
panic
report
time.
card, right? Again, yeah. But I
It's
also
even panic time when you actually are pretty organized, because you're kind of
intimidating.
going back and like making sure you didn't miss anything, and you
Yeah.
know you want every little cent that you can to be able to take as a deduction. But with us, like, we want it to be legit. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So I'm
Absolutely.
like, is this legit? If I'm questioning it, is it going to be questionable? So even that can be pretty.
And there's some
stressful.
level of materiality. So materiality being, how significant is it or not? I doubt the IRS would come in and audit all of your mileage logs if it looks reasonable.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
So
And
there's
maybe
some
that's
level
fine.
of reasonableness.
Sure.
Yeah.
But if your business if you're taking so many deductions that you're showing a loss 5 years in a row,
Yep.
that's concerning, because
Yeah.
are you really a business? Are you a hobby? Can you really, so
Yeah.
there are some, you need to be trending in such a way that they're like, yeah, you look like you're a going concern. This looks reasonable.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great way to transition into the hobby versus should we make this a small business? Like,
Right.
how do you advise people on that when you kind of come in and start working with them?
So what I typically will do is I will say, especially if they're a solo entrepreneur, I'll say, okay, what is your business? What is your offering? We start saying, okay, here's what you think you can charge for this service that you're offering. What kind of expenses go through it? So we start talking about your direct costs, what are all the, if I'm having a class, then I need to rent space, I need materials, I need advertising things that go for that class. And then at the end of it, I've made $100 on that class per person, or whatever the thing is.
And you spent $400.
And you spent $400.
Sounds like my novel company.
Sounds
but-
like our hobby.
So if your revenue.
Oh, here, the podcast.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, I missed that. Sorry.
So we'll go through line by line, and I did this with a client recently, and we kind of went through, and she realized that she was spending 4 hours to make $100, and I said, "Can you pay your own bills on $25 an hour?"
Yeah.
And then hang on, before 25, you got to take out your taxes, take out your overhead, your rent, all those things. And she realized, I either need to totally restructure what I'm doing, or this is a hobby, and I need to do it because I'm passionate about it, and I need a job.
Yeah.
And so I try not to be the person that says you need to go get a job, but
I don't want to crap on your dream.
Right.
But
especially because I love
Yeah.
when people are passionate about
Yeah.
their things. But I also have to be realistic with them.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it means let's find a plan to rework it. But typically through the conversation of us sorting through their numbers, they come to their own conclusion.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I think that's probably, we need to
Yeah.
take this seriously.
and you love
Right.
working with creatives, so that's a hard thing
right.
to take away from them. You know what I mean? Because that you love when you see somebody so passionate about something, they want to share it with others, but you're just bringing kind of a little bit of a realistic look to it.
And really, we also know, and I'm guilty of it too with my own creative stuff, that creatives, I don't think, are traditionally those that like sit down and map out a business plan every time. And so,
Correct.
because I would expect that with most small businesses, you're going to take a loss the first few years. You got to build up your infrastructure. You got to buy these fancy mic stands and all this kind of stuff. But as long as in your plan, you have planned out where you're going to start getting income, what your target income is going to be per quarter, that's where you can start saying, okay, right now you make $5 an hour. But if your plan maps out and it shows in a logical way how eventually you can, I guess I just wanted to point that out too, because I think we all sort of get the heebie-jeebies that it's a failure at the beginning if you're been doing the entrepreneur thing, because the numbers don't. Even the Airbnb at first were like, oh God, we're just pouring money in.
Oh yeah, still are.
Yeah.
Well, that's you're right. It doesn't have to make money the first year, especially if you have, let's say you have savings and you were prepared for, I want to start a business. I know it's going to cost money to do that.
Yep.
But you also need to have some like mileposts of, okay, I'm now 12 months in. Am I still tracking toward that plan I have to say, yeah, I can expect to be profitable at whatever point you decided.
Yeah.
Sometimes people have 3 years worth of savings and they've just decided that they're going to take 3 years, and that's awesome.
Yeah.
But you have to be consistent internally of like, this is how I know if it's working or not.
Right. And how long do I want to keep bleeding money until you were kind of joking and kind of not about the Airbnb and not to overshare, but that is finally starting to look, we knew, again, you got to do all this stuff. Yeah. But we had, part of it is just keeping the faith and just trudging along. But if the numbers are just, or they're going down, then you're like,
Right.
Yeah. And we had like realistic goals with that, I think. We weren't like, oh my God. I mean, I had a little bit higher expectations, but we had a goal of just, we want to move to North Carolina, so the house needs to just pay for all of itself, basically. And it's done that. Right. We haven't dipped out of our personal stuff. So that's great that we haven't had to, minus all the stuff leading up to, getting it right.
The actual investment
part. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think maybe having a rental or a short-term rental is a different kind of animal, because in some cases you don't really need to make money as much as you just need not to spend it. That's not the same as like I'm starting a business. If I'm starting a business and it's not making any money, you're in trouble. You're like you said, you're like, hey, you need to make some money to survive.
Well, and some people that I talk to, they I have another client who his business has been taking a loss for several years because he's had various inheritances and he sold property that he had and things. And that's great. That works for him. But we just this afternoon, we had a serious sit down and said, okay, what does your actual operating budget at home look like? Because you can't expect more inheritances just next year just because you don't have any more property to sell. So like your business needs to start doing something.
Right. Yeah.
And how do we do that?
Right. I mean, that's a great question.
Yeah. Where are we going? And that probably, working with people that have like those different streams of income, how do you handle that? Because it's hard for us to just handle. I mean, not hard, but it's like, you got to really pay attention to it when it's just even one source of income coming in.
But before you answer that, we like to think, if we had one credit card that we used for every single thing, and you never purchased anything else outside, this would be amazing, because then it's
all in one spot.
The whole credit card, like I've never purchased anything on this credit card that's not for the company, and I've never purchased anything for the company that's not on this credit card, and that is never going to happen. It's a great idea, but so how do that's a great question.
She's laughing,
Angie
so I'm sure there's
I'm laughing
behind
because if you could do that, you would be an ideal client. That's exactly what I need people to do.
Yeah.
So we do recommend, especially if you have an LLC, this is important. If you have an LLC, it is a limited liability corporation. The idea of that is that you got it so that if they come after something that happened to your property or your business, that you as an entity are separate from your business.
Yeah.
However, if you commingle all your funds and you have your personal and your business funds and you buy and sell things interchangeably, the court system has started ruling that you do not treat it like a separate entity financially. Therefore, you don't get the limited liability.
Okay, getting that credit card.
Okay. But also that comes to play with, having a separate checking account, not depositing personal things, like if you sold something into that, not whatever else the rules are.
So especially you have a W-2 income still. So we would want a business checking account so that you have everything from your business goes into it and your W-2 goes into your personal, because you've already paid taxes on that money.
So we did that right. I know you're saying for anyone, but this is enlightening to me, because I was kind of joking about the thing, but we literally in the past 3 days have decided, all right, let's just get a credit card for the business, because I'll go, no, I'll buy that.
Pay one bill once a month,
And I'll go, oh, we need new cameras at the house. I have some extra money. I'll buy it. And not thinking that, no, don't. It's not about that. because I'm trying not to take money away from the business. It's not about that. It's about keeping your books separate. So that's great to know.
Yeah.
Yes. So in that case, let's say, you want to buy more equipment. You should just send, but you don't have money in the business account for that. You should make an owner's investment. You write a check to the business and you just say, I have invested in the company. You keep it separate. You buy the things on the business that you want. Later, when you have left over, you write yourself a check and you give yourself an owner's disbursement.
So you can still do it without taking, because we don't want to chew away our profit. So you can still do it. Oh, okay. So
That's what I was saying to you earlier, that I want like the new Ring cameras that we bought. I want to be able to pay him back for those because he bought those on a special or whatever through one of his other cards. We would just pay that. I would write him a check for that, or can you just pay that bill actually?
So there's two ways you can do that. If you want to actually reimburse the funds, then yes, you can just write yourself a check, and on that check, for your records, have your receipt of where you purchased the Ring cameras.
Yeah.
Alternatively, if you don't care about the actual cash, but you want to just reflect in your books that you've done it, you would do a journal entry that says, I bought equipment, and instead of the offset hitting cash, the offset hits owner's investment. And so that reflects that you invested funds indirectly instead of directly.
Right.
Okay,
I'd like the idea of the company writing writing a check out to the individual, just so it's still all in the books. So if we had to do it that way.
Yeah.
But that's good to know. If anybody else wants to come on the podcast and give us free financial advice,
I will take it.
We'll take
Every
it.
little bit
Because
of
I feel like this is literally, I feel like this is worth this. I mean,
these are just, these to you are like simple things that are like, you just know.
Yeah.
And people just don't know that kind of stuff. Because even us, we're like, how do we, but if I write a check out of there and write it to myself, it's going to look like my income. You know what I mean? Like,
right. And so
things like that.
Recording it properly inside QuickBooks, circling all the way back around to, you need to understand what QuickBooks is doing, how it's thinking, so that when you record that transaction, you don't double hit on both sides.
Oh,
Yeah.
got you.
and we've not done QuickBooks before, but I will tell you one thing I really love about the mobile app is that it will track, so it'll connect digitally up to all your accounts. I know you know this, but I love this.
Say it, it's good.
You can be going through your account and you can swipe. You can set it up to, if I swipe right, it goes to that account. If
like
I
a
swipe
dating
left,
app.
it's so, I'm sorry, not account, but category. So it starts categorizing all your transactions for you
And
as
it probably
you go.
learns an algorithm or whatever, right?
It does. So it starts
Yeah.
suggesting, hey, you made another purchase at Spectrum. Was this for, internet service for your home? But the other thing it does is it will auto track your miles if you leave it on. So maybe that's what you thought I was going to talk about. So at the end of the year, if you have a business vehicle, which we don't do that, it'll show you exactly what your mileage was, and it's already ready to give to your accountant or to put in the books, which is cool.
We do that. We just don't really track the miles. We take like whatever the deduction is.
The minimum.
for that, because we do
Or
drive
the
to Florida
maximum.
sometimes.
Yeah,
for the
that's-
business.
that matters.
So, yeah.
So I don't want to rain on your automated parade too much.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, I don't use it. I used it for that one with my novel business years
Rain
ago.
on it, girl.
But is it?
So it is consistent in the sense that, yes, it'll say Spectrum every month you have it. The downside is, so QuickBooks has the option where you can tell it that make a rule that every time it's from Spectrum,
Yes, that's
say
right.
it's a phone, and then just, I never want to look at it.
Yeah.
The problem is, nowhere in that process did it ask you for a receipt. So if you're somebody that cares about having your receipts, then it totally bypasses that step.
Okay.
Oh, so yes.
And so I like setting up the rule so that it codes it for me, but then I never tell it to auto add because I want it to pause in that screen where I say, oh, here, I'm going to go find the receipt, attach it, and then I push it through.
Okay. I've never done that.
QuickBooks, you can actually add a copy of receipts.
Yes.
Yeah, so in the way that I ever used it, again, I never used the real version of QuickBooks. So I was kind of doing what you're saying, where I was just categorizing stuff in the app. It's so
exhilarating to do that, but it's just
but
not quite the right way to do it.
But I never took the information inside the app and put it into QuickBooks ever. It was just for my own tracking. So it was.
Yeah, I think, okay, so I probably need to get on board with keeping receipts this year.
Yeah.
Because I haven't, because I'm like, well, it's going through the account. So it's there. They're not.
So
there's proof.
Let's
of it.
talk about that.
Let's talk about receipts.
Okay. and I'm going to hone in on this just a little bit because your bank statement is not a receipt.
Yeah.
Because, so I had a client.
I've been treating it like one, so I
Me too. Me too.
together.
Because he had a $200 charge for Belk. And I said, what is this charge? He said, oh, I had to buy a nice suit for a big event, and I'm going to call it a business expense. So I'm not going to get into whether it's a business expense or not
Yeah, yeah.
because it depends on the situation. But I said, there's no way for me to know that you didn't go buy a nice dress for your wife. How do I know what you bought?
The itemization is what they need.
So a bank statement does not have any itemization on it.
Okay.
Obviously digital receipts are fine.
Yeah, digital receipts are fine. So if you get an email and you go buy coffee and it's connected to Square on their side, you'll get an email receipt that says, "Oh, I bought coffee and a scone." That's great.
But if you have digital scans of paper receipts, that also counts.
Perfect.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, that's what I did last year. Is I scanned every into
great.
Dropbox.
Yeah.
So.
Right. So then you can.
But this
attach
year
it
I
straight.
haven't been as much because I'm like, oh, I don't need receipts. Like I didn't have to send any to my tax guy. Like why do I need them? It's all in the bank
You have
statement.
to get audited though. You don't have the. I get it now.
I mean, we're going to chance it this year, but I'll start doing it from now on.
Well, and that's a lot of people chance it, and they're allowed to do that. I put in my contract very specifically that I'm not responsible for all your documentation if you get audited because I just can't. I can't make people do that.
No.
And a lot of times they don't keep them at all, and they just don't have them. So, I encourage it because I think it's really good practice. But at the end of the day, you get to decide what you're going to do.
And
Right.
really now with all the technology, you have your phone, you can literally snap a picture. I have it. I do have like when my sister cleans for me in my house in Florida and they'll buy stuff for the house if they need it and I reimburse them via Apple Cash or whatever. I just have them send me a picture of the receipt and then I have the text where it says reimbursement, the date, and how much it was. So it's going to match up if somebody comes and audits. And I have a receipt folder on my phone.
Yeah.
So I do keep those ones,
Perfect.
but like I've not been good about when I go shopping for something, keeping the receipt. I just, I don't need that. It's on the thing.
Well, now you know.
Now I know.
You also
But
do.
that's a great tip though.
Yeah, no doubt. You also do like personal budget coaching too, even if you're not an entrepreneur or a small business. Then.
Yes, correct. So I will work with couples. My very first client, friends of mine in Chattanooga, and they said
Oh, that's a hard thing for a friend to do.
it was kind of scary for them, I think, at first. But I told them, I'd like to learn this process of working with people. And so we sat down, and the process is very simple. It's not a secret. I have them bring 2 months worth of bank statements, and we sit down in that first meeting. It usually takes 2 hours, and they will go through and tell me every single purchase that they made, what it was for. And that's usually enough to
That's eye-opening.
jumpstart the entire process. Like at that point, usually clients will just become very aware, very independent. They go home, they'll go on a nice dinner date, and they will just talk through, we spent $1,000 on restaurants this month. Are we okay with that? Is that a lifestyle we want to continue?
Yeah.
Because we could do $200 on restaurants and go on a weekly date instead, and that $800 pays off our debt. So those first friends, it's been 18 months. They called me about 3 weeks ago and they said, we've paid off $15,000 worth of debt. We decided they've been wanting to buy a house forever, but they said, we just decided we're going to pay off all of our debt. Then we'll start saving for a house and we'll be able to qualify easier and we'll be in a
Nice.
spot to be able to afford it more.
Yeah.
He picked up more hours. She picked up more hours too. She's self-employed and just realized that they wanted to just get down and get it done.
Yeah.
And it was beautiful.
Oh,
When it's in
that.
your face like that, because it's like, to me, this was the
Well, that's the part of the getting naked part.
right. Yeah,
How
this
much
is-
did you spend on Starbucks last week?
But it does this. You know what was the first sort of, not to keep making this about my own experience, but to relate to that and not sound like an old man, but I'm in my 50s. So when I was maybe in my 20s, I would discover that at work, all the guys that go out to lunch, guys and gals would go out to lunch, and it was great. It was awesome. But if you brought your lunch, the difference monthly in just bringing your lunch and going out to lunch was astronomical. It was like,
Yeah.
you could buy a car. So it was a car payment
Yeah.
basically. So that's a good way to
I mean,
sort
food
of.
is expensive. So even just doing your own meals at home and budgeting for that,
Yeah.
going to the grocery store every week for 2 people is expensive.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
and I do not come in saying your grocery budget has to be X amount and, don't. If there's something that in your lifestyle you are excited about and it makes you happy, just budget it in.
Yeah.
Like put it in there. So I was working with my brother and sister-in-law when they first got married and they were figuring out their budget and they're coffee snobs and they just love their coffee. And they don't necessarily go out for coffee all the time, but they buy really good coffee. They make it at home and it's just, he's like,
Fancy espresso machine.
right. They take it very seriously. And I love that about them because it's something they love
Because you
together.
have a good cup of coffee when you go over there, don't
Well,
you?
I don't myself like it, but I know that
my
they're very
Lord.
proud of it.
How old are you?
I'll be 30 next year.
Yeah, you're not
Or
old
this
enough
year.
yet. You'll start liking
Can
it.
I tell you what? I didn't like coffee until my firstborn kept me awake for 2
Yeah.
weeks.
I drink a lot of tea,
Yeah.
so I get a little bit of caffeine that way. But made it through college and my MBA without it, and I'm like, oh,
Like, why do it now?
Why do
right?
it now?
Yeah.
I'm good. But anyway, I just told them, put it in your budget. I want you to spend that money if that's what you're excited about, and you can work the rest of it. So if there's things that people have in their budgets, I'm not going to shame them for, why are you spending $200 a month on coffee? Well, you can do that if you want. You're an adult.
But I think that's we've talked to James Hicks. He's another financial advisor. He's a financial advisor in Florida. And same kind of thing. He is not there to shame you. He wants same thing. What are the things that are important to you? Budget that in. You know what I mean? Because you're going to be miserable. You're not going to follow through with this if you're not being able to keep some of the lifestyle that you want. It's those other things that you're not really noticing that you might need to tweak a little bit.
And I love that you put it that way because it's different for everybody. It could be if I can't go to dinners. It could be if I can't buy my technology. It could be if I can't, if I can't buy a boat every year, whatever it is, as long as you're aware, that's what you're doing. You're saying you're aware. You're not just accidentally going out to lunch every day and then realizing you're broke. So.
And I think also as you meet with clients, you can kind of probably within the first 5 or 10 minutes of talking with them, tell what type of coaching they need, right? Yeah. You are going to need some that need a little bit of little strong hand and a little bit shaming. Maybe they need that.
Oh, no.
Maybe they're asking for it, though. But some people do. Some people need to be like put on alert, and then other people you got to kind of be a little more easy with. So I'm sure you can read them.
I have a client that she came to me for business book cleanup, but we've been doing personal stuff too. And the other day I emailed her, she goes, I think I want to take out this loan to pay off these cards and try and get my interest rates down. And I said, you can do that on one condition. You put your credit cards in a box and you lock them up and you don't use them anymore, because you moving your debt around doesn't help if you're going to keep spending more things.
Yeah.
That's what
I
do.
She's like, that's exactly what I needed to hear. Thank you. And that was a little more firm than I would be with most people, but you're right. I got to the point where she wanted somebody to tell it to her straight because she wants it to be better, but she doesn't know how to do that.
That's my dad.
Freeze your credit cards in a block of ice.
Yes.
Right.
My dad used to call that borrowing from Paul. I know it's a common saying to pay Peter or whatever.
From Peter to pay Paul. Yeah.
Just moving money around. It's not, nothing's really paid off.
Guilty. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to do it. I'm like, oh, wait, paid that one off. Okay. Oh, I can go over here now. Oh, yeah.
Unless you have a card that is, you have one that has like 0% interest for X amount of time.
Moving stuff around.
But that's strategic if you're trying to then pay it off, and it's a tool to pay it off faster. But if you just are like, oh, it's 0% for 18 months, I'm going to ignore it.
Yeah, true.
You didn't help yourself.
Yeah, very true.
So.
I have that, again, bringing it back to me, but just the tricks we play to our brains. In my Excel spreadsheet, if any of the debt of any of my cards goes over a certain number, it turns red. And then it stays red, and that bothers me every time I'm in the Excel spreadsheet. I'm like, that one's still red. You got to get it down. So I think it's these little games you have to play with yourself to get your finances where you want them.
Yeah, whatever works best.
And the other
for
thing
you,
the other thing we do is I try and take a very holistic budget approach in the sense of
that.
Christmas is going to come every year, and depending on your family culture and what kinds of things you do for Christmas, maybe you need $100 a month, maybe you need $300 a month, but you know that at the end, in December and Thanksgiving, November, whatever, you're going to spend money on family time. Mm-hmm. So start budgeting for it. You know that your cars are going to need maintenance at some point. So maybe you set aside $100 a month for that, and you just have a little savings account for my little mini savings of life is going to happen. Mm-hmm. So every month I want to feel the pain of setting it aside so that when it happens, I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
Like when you have dogs that have to go to the vet for unexpected things.
Literally, a client called me the other day and she had started putting some savings aside. And she said, I was able to take them to the vet and spend $1,000. And I didn't have to take out a new loan. I just wrote the check and it was no big deal.
That's nice.
And I was like, how did that feel? Didn't it feel freeing to say, I'm not controlled by my debt?
Yeah. I'm not worried about taking it out of there because I'm okay. I've got my bills paid.
Yeah.
And so I love watching people learn how to work. It's a muscle to delay gratification and to say, I'm going to save for something. And then I'm not impulse buying.
Because that's our culture, Like, I want it now. Oh, I can split that up into 4 payments? Okay. 32% interest later.
Yeah.
You
exactly.
can.
Exactly.
Wow.
But I get it now. woohoo.
Right. So watching them build the muscle over time is really rewarding.
Yeah, and it's probably harder now for each younger generation because you have things like Amazon where, when we were younger, you're circling something in a Sears catalog to sound like an old man that you want one day. Now the kids just
gold star,
right.
5 gold stars.
But now the kids are just, you get to be of age to have money at all and have your job, and you're just ordered on Amazon until you spend your whole paycheck in 5 seconds.
Well, I love that you're helping the small businesses. I want to touch base a little bit about how you're helping them to kind of get on that path of the early growth when they first start, when they come to you and they're early in their business. To walk us through that a little bit, what does that look like?
So that size of person, that size of business I've put that into my coaching side versus the bookkeeping side. And so it can be any number of things. It can be, like we talked about earlier, let's make a business plan. It can be, we'll start with personal finances, then go into business. Or it can simply be, you need somebody to bounce ideas off of. And does this make sense? Who can I connect you with? I'm trying to build my network and be able to be a good connector for people to say,
great.
I may not be able to do this need that you have, but here's somebody that I trust that will do that.
That's awesome. Yeah.
I love this. Networking is the piece of being self-employed that I never expected to like as much as I do. Because when I was working in a corporate job, I had no reason to go out of my house and go downtown and meet people. Like, there was nothing that took me out. I went home and I was exhausted and I crashed. And so I would sometimes see friends on the weekends, but that was it. And now it is part of my job to go and just be interested in people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's so fun.
That's part of why we do this, honestly.
I mean, this is why we love podcasting, and really, we started doing it just to get more involved in the community. I've interviewed a lot of nonprofits and creatives. Definitely, we've had a lot of creatives on, and small, just small restaurants and stuff like that. But really, just connecting those businesses, seeing how we've connected. They've connected through the podcast, or you're just suggesting this place over there. But it's kind of fun to be a part of that little intricate part where people actually connect and do something together.
And to do business together, for sure, because we've had that come from the podcast where small businesses work together to come up with a new business or a new income stream between the two of them. But the
just
meeting,
hearing their stories too.
Yeah, but the meeting, like you said too, there's something in that I call it like our collateral friends, because as you get older, it's almost weird to be like, how are we going to find new friends? And we're in a new town too. But it just sort of organically happens when you meet people. I'm sure some of your clients become your friends. And it's just being able to get out and meet new people and hear their story. And you're getting into their business. And it probably allows you to get to know them a little better, a little faster. I mean, most of us can't go, let me see your checkbook, just so you can start to get to know you.
What kinds of things are you passionate about?
Let's see if we're going to be friends.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me see where you're shopping. Let me see what's going
I'm
on there.
going to get him a wine rack for Christmas. Right. But I see what you're saying, and it does get as I'm saying it, I'm realizing it does give you insight into their life and what they like and what their passions are, and maybe their bad habits or their good habits.
And it might not even be something they notice, right? You might have to bring that to their attention.
Well, especially in the age of recurring payments for things.
Oh.
I had a client that we sat down, and Orange Theory, she thought she canceled her Orange Theory a year. And so
she's been having that for 3 years.
Yeah, she's had it for years, and she thought she canceled it a year ago. And so I joked with her that I made up my fee that night by finding her Orange Theory membership that she called and had them actually cancel.
Yeah.
It would have just kept going because she wasn't paying it.
Auto deductions are the devil to people, though, aren't they? Because you're like, oh, what is it, a couple bucks until you find 10 of them.
Well, Dan has that all the time too, where it's like an app or something, that he forgot he doesn't use anymore.
Yeah.
It'll pop up and be like $100 and some.
Especially when it's an annual one and you don't think about it.
That's the one that got me. Parallels for luckily those, a lot of times, not to negate the value of what you're doing by any means, but a lot of times if you reach out to the company and go, I didn't know this was coming. Look at the records. I haven't used this thing in 6 months, and then you still got to go through the pain of waiting for the payback and all that. But imagine you didn't notice.
Right, if you were paying attention, and a lot of people do not pay attention. They just are like, I don't know where my money's going.
Yeah, exactly. That's the other thing too. And I know people who are friends of ours that are well off, and to me, the people that are more well off a lot of the time, they don't care. $100 gone here or there, and I know somebody that did one of their accounting, and it would be like thousands of dollars missing. Don't exactly know where. Would have never noticed if you hadn't gone through it.
Yeah.
So.
Well, Yeah, and that's the other thing too I wanted to mention with a small business, especially when they get to the size that they bring on a bookkeeper themselves.
Yep.
How does the business owner know that the bookkeeper's doing the job well?
Yeah.
And so sometimes I take the consulting role of coming in and poking around the books and saying, this doesn't add up. Something is not quite right here.
It's
Yeah.
probably good to have everybody to do that.
That's that whole
Yes.
reconciling thing,
Yeah,
though.
it is.
But, you hear too many stories of like actors who hired their brother to be their accountant and then they have no money.
Yeah.
Right.
They're on the streets. They're literally, owe the freaking government millions of dollars in taxes. And you're like, that's somebody that you're supposed to really trust. So anybody that's going to say, oh, you don't trust me, you're going to have me checked up on, you're not working.
One of my first clients, I was looking at their books and I had all kinds of questions and I was not confident about what was going on, but I was still learning. And so I was trying to be very humble about maybe I just haven't encountered this before. And I sent an email to their CPA and I basically got, how dare you ask me questions? And I thought,
No.
this is not going to be a good fit.
No, and I think, I
Trust
understand.
but verify is the accountant mantra.
That's the mantra.
There you go.
Because
That's great. Yeah.
I get your vibe where you're like I'm about to make some Italian food. No, I get I get your I get your vibe where you're saying, well, you're kind of like irritated by someone, mock irritation, but I feel like you almost have to say, as my business, it's not that I don't trust you. It's just that we just need someone else to come in and make sure that you didn't accidentally miss something. I mean, it could be as simple as an accident, or I
make mistakes that my team, I have a small team now, and I make mistakes that they catch sometimes, and it just happens.
We all do.
Yeah.
I mean, especially when you're dealing with numbers. Like, you're going to get buggy-eyed. Like, it's going to happen.
You do. And I feel like a second set of eyes on numbers is invaluable because my annual budget every year is like 250 lines at my day job. And when someone says, hey, on line 57, you miscalculated that to the, it's not unexpected. It's almost impossible to get right the first time. Yeah. So I feel like that approach to say, hey, it's not that we don't trust you, but let's just make sure we're both like, do you want your boss at the end of the year to say, hey, accounting department, you totally screwed this up? Or do you want to have a second set of eyes to come in here and save both of you,
Yeah.
I like that aspect of it versus the versus the Nicolas Cage approach where I have to do 10,000 movies a year now to pay back the government, no matter what the script is.
So bad. It's true though. I mean,
Totally
and I
true.
think that is any aspect of your business. I trust my mom and my sister. They take excellent care of our house down there. You know what I mean? But when I'm in town, they know the stickler's coming. You know what I mean? I'm just gonna check and make sure everything's to where my expectations are, and they're fine with that. I'm not mean about it. It's just we'll just check that that's doing good.
That's
that's
a common term in business though. Trust but verify. So I love that one.
Yep. That is great. Well, where can everybody find more information about your business?
Thank you. LakeSiteAccounting.com is my website. It is with a T, Lakesite. It's a little town outside of Chattanooga where we lived for 10 years.
Oh, okay. Cool.
We recently moved back in September, so we're getting reestablished in the Asheville
So we
area.
just moved back, or we just moved here in December, so we're not far behind you.
Yeah.
And then also I'm on Instagram. I don't post there a lot yet, but I'm enough
We
of a
already
presence
said
where you
working
can
on the
find
social
me.
media,
Yes.
right? Yeah.
Because again, I'm an accountant. I don't do
It's a
marketing very well.
It's a
so.
hard job. It's a very hard job.
Is your Instagram link on your website?
It should be.
Okay.
Yes.
Yep.
Very cool.
I am on LinkedIn as well.
Perfect.
Yeah, we do have a monthly newsletter. I just sent it out. So today's the 2nd. I sent it out yesterday.
Awesome.
And would be glad to add you to it. If you
Oh,
want.
that'd be awesome. And then
so
we'll also
absolutely.
put some links in the show notes
Thank
to all
you.
this stuff for you. Yeah.
And then also, usually you can find you at the Black Mountain.
Yes,
Networking
the Black
event.
Mountain Business Club
Okay,
on
perfect.
Wednesdays at 9 a.m. at the Monte Vista.
All right. I think they probably have some information about that online, so maybe I'll look that up. And
I
we'll
can
add
try and
that.
send you something too.
Because that'd be great for small business owners in the area.
And I also wanted to say too, I always do a complimentary first conversation with somebody. So whether it's on the personal side or the business, just to kind of hear what they're looking for and if I might be a good fit. Sometimes I'm not, and that's okay. But usually,
I love that though. That's a great way to approach your business because you're not going to be for every client. You know,
You probably
every
don't want
client,
everyone you meet.
every client isn't going to be for you.
Yeah.
You know,
Yep.
and you have to be able. you already took away that stress factor of, working so much at that job that you loved, but you don't want that again in your small business. And
Correct.
You're the boss. So
Or someone that's
control that.
literally not going to take your advice or follow anything. It's
Yeah.
like, why am I even here?
Yeah, there's no benefit to you for
Right.
that,
And I've had to let clients go before, and that's okay. It happens. But,
Sure.
I try and work with integrity, and so I take that very seriously. And
course.
I love
if that's not something that person cares about for their business, then, sometimes that's just not a good fit. But that's okay.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us,
Yeah.
Heather. And you guys, if you are in need of an awesome accountant, you make sure to head on over to LakeSite Accounting. We'll put the link below or in the show notes, not below this YouTube video.
Right here.
I don't
Right
know.
here.
Right. No, we don't
No,
do
we're not
that.
doing that.
No, that's too hard for Dan to edit all that. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for tuning in and supporting us each and every week. We're so excited to be here in the Asheville area and meeting with all these great small businesses, and we look forward to just filling our calendar for the rest of the year.
Yes.
And if you know anybody who'd be a great fit, please reach out and let us know. You can find us Fine and Danjee all over the place, social media, website, pretty much
That I
everywhere.
will put right here. I don't really
Oh,
know
will
if
you?
I'm going to
No.
do that, but
Well, it'll be really impressive if you do. Anyway, guys, thank you so much once again. And remember, at the end of each and every day,
It's all fine and dandy.
Hi, guys. We hope you enjoyed the show today. If you did, we would love a review. So make sure to head over to your Apple Podcast app or whatever app you listen to your podcast on and give us a 5-star review. Also, give us a like and a follow on our social media. You can find that all under Fine and Danjee. And if you want to find out more about our guest or about us, head over to fineanddanjee.com.